Hello, my friends. It is Wednesday, June 12th, 2024, and this is the Daily Brief. We're going to start with battlefield losses. 980 Russians off the battlefield. That's pretty low given the last 2 months or so. It's still above the average, but it's low for the average of the last 2 months. 9 tanks, 11 armored combat vehicles, 46 artillery pieces, and 60 vehicles and fuel tanks. But what I want to point you to is the air defense systems. Plus 2 air defense systems were taken off the battlefield. 3 were targeted, but only 2 are verified at this point. Andrew Perpetua shows about a 3, maybe even 4-to-1 losses of Russians to Ukrainians. Okay, Defense forces eliminate 24 out of 24 UAVs, 5 Air Force missiles. But some things got through. They don't say that in the headline. And Russia launched an attack on Kyiv. Air raid sirens were going off. Power was cut. I want to read through a couple of paragraphs in this article because this will give you some significant perspective of what it's actually like being in a condition where power gets cut off and you have to try to work around this. When the power goes down and the elevator stops working, remember, these guys, mostly in big cities like Kyiv, live in these high-rise buildings. It's not like your suburban independent house, so you have a whole different problem set. When the power goes down and the elevator stops working, Ukrainian couple Marina and Valery Chalich leave their pushchair on the ground floor and carry their 2-month-old son up 12 flights of stairs to their apartment instead. That changes the equation. What else? The main challenge is lack of water. Valery Talich, 34, speaking to Reuters in his Kyiv home, where water pumps can't reach the higher floors without electricity. That's big problem number 2. For cooking, we also had to adjust and purchase a small gas camping stove to heat stuff up. Big problem number 3. Well, the baby seriously complicates it. That's big problem number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If you have children, you understand what I'm talking about. Many Ukrainians fear things will get worse as winter approaches. Moscow says Ukraine's energy infrastructure is a legitimate military objective and denies targeting civilians. Long-term damage. Just as Russia has stepped up its assault on Ukraine's power generating capacity, Kyiv has struggled to secure enough air defense systems from its Western allies to protect itself. Like, think about how much damage has been done just because they couldn't, to the energy grid, just because they didn't have the air defense in order to stop it. As the country eagerly pleaded for additional air defenses and awaited delayed military aid from the United States, Russian drones and missiles caused over $1 billion worth of damage. I'm surprised it only said $1 billion. I would think it was much higher than that. Ukrainian authorities say the spring attacks have taken out about half the country's energy generation capacity. Some Kyiv residents went without power for more than 5 hours a day last week due to deficits in the energy system, the worst situation in the capital since last winter. And the capital is pretty reasonably well protected compared to other parts of the country. If you live in Kharkiv, all bets are off. Last little bit, you understand everything here is insignificant, he said. This is the person being interviewed. At the front, it's far more difficult. Okay, U.S. will send another Patriot missile system after Kyiv's desperate call for air defenses. Germany just said that they're sending one. The U.S. just said that they're sending one. But there's apparently a third coming, and I'm not sure where the third one is coming with. This is Jay in Kyiv with 3 more Patriot batteries on the way, and U.S. increasingly comfortable with Ukraine striking Russian territory. Things are changing. I'm not sure exactly where the third one's coming from. If you know, put that in the comments below. We're learning together, right? We're working at this. I learned a lot from your comments, and I do read as many as I can. Okay, invaders get bogged down in Vovchansk. Vovchansk, as you know, is north of Kharkiv, and these are like the suburbs outside Kharkiv, and it's been pretty bad there. But in Kharkiv direction, the enemy is conducting unsuccessful actions, trying to move forward into the depth of the battle formations and create so-called security belt. In Vovchansk, the enemy is stuck despite the forces and means involved, which it constantly replenishes at the expense of other units in the area, Sersky wrote. But the Ukrainians are having to do the same thing too. They're having to attend to what's going on there at the expense of other units, and that's creating opportunities for the Russians in other places. And we have to just be aware that that's what's happening. Fighting continues in the areas of Chasiv Yar, and they list a number of other areas. The enemy is trying to capture these settlements in order to expand the geography of its advance toward Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. And I think that's very fair. We see that here. This is the British intelligence update. Russian ground forces have likely achieved a limited break in an eastern suburb of Chasiv Yar, a town located approximately 8 kilometers to the west of Bakhmut. We're going to come back to Bakhmut in just a little bit and look at what happened there. In eastern Ukraine, they have also likely taken control of Ivanivsk, a village southeast of Chasiv Yar. Heavy fighting is reported in urban areas, with the Ukrainian armed forces contesting the Russian ground forces' advance. Russian forces likely remain on the east side of the canal that runs through the city, which presents an obstacle to their advance. It's highly likely that the Russian ground forces is employing a dismounted infantry approach to clearing the suburbs, and that the Russian casualty rate is high. So if they are getting out of protection and having to come dismounted, that would account for some of the higher numbers, not just in Chasiv Yar, but in other places. Chasiv Yar is likely of value to Russia due to its strategic position on a plateau, as well as its historic use as a logistics hubs for the Ukrainian armed forces. So Chasiv Yar is actually a legitimate target to be taking, as opposed to some other places like Bakhmut, which is some distance from there. Okay, the Ukrainian General Staff reports that overnight, our defense forces again attacked the Russian anti-aircraft missile systems stationed in temporarily occupied Crimea. This time, one S-300 division near Belbek, as well as two S-400 divisions near Belbek and Sevastopol were attacked. Two radars of S-300 and 400 were destroyed. Regarding the third radar, information is being clarified. Now that is why we saw in here that there were only two air defense systems and not three. Okay, so it's still being clarified. We don't know. And this is different than the S-400 and two S-300s that were hit just 2 or 3 days ago. Okay, the location of the strike of the S-300 is right here. Let's skip over to this. I said, we talked about Bakhmut and Chasiv Yar. This just came out, and so the BBC and Media Zona were working together to independently confirm the deaths from what happened in Bakhmut, like the Prigozhin's men. Okay, so here's what happened. It reported that 20,000 Wagner troops died during last year's assault on Bakhmut. Almost 90% were convicts. So these were just using men as expendable parts at meatwave assaults, and it was bad, right? BBC and Russia Media Zona reported on Monday, June 10th, that they had obtained a document detailing the coffin payments made to the families of Wagner fighters who had died during the 10-month battle for Bakhmut. Remember, it took 10 months to take that little bit of real estate by just throwing men into the grinder. Just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And then Prigozhin gets this great victory, but he did it. It's infuriating to me. The waste of human life is just like, So the Wagner fighters who died during the 10-month battle for Bakhmut, it provided a complete list of the personal information of 19,547 mercenaries who died there. That's 10 months. In 10 years, it wasn't that bad in Afghanistan. Look at this. The figure of the Russian troops killed in the battle for Bakhmut contrasts shockingly with the official data released by Soviet forces of those who died during its 10-year Afghanistan campaign. These show that a total of 14,000 were killed, 9,000 died in combat, 4,000 from wounds, 1,000 died from diseases and accidents. In 10 years, not 10 months. It's just amazing. But it's not like anything is new here, or that they haven't done they're still doing this, right? Here's Anton Gurashenko. Today, we can't take it anymore. 3 days without food and water, no support. I don't know what to do next. Russian soldier Oleg Vensin, call sign Fiska, a serviceman from the 83rd Airborne Assault Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces, recorded an appeal in which he said that he is very thirsty and can't take it anymore. Fiska's legs have failed, but he really wants to live, so he decided to surrender. He also advised other Russians never to sign a contract with the Russian Defense Ministry. Why? Well, because they do this. They're willing to sacrifice you And it's not even for the greater good. Maybe it's for their glory or for a couple of extra kilometers, but they're willing to sacrifice you unnecessarily. Okay, last thing I want to show you is this. This was fascinating to me. There have been a number of instances now of drone-on-drone attacks. So this Russian Zala reconnaissance drone was hit by an FPV drone and knocked out of the sky. We're going to see a lot more of this in the future, and it's going to get very sophisticated over time. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.